My parents used my college fund to pay for my stepsister's wedding, but then my grandparents showed up at the ceremony with life-changing news that made everyone's jaws drop. I, 21F, have always known that my stepsister Amanda, 25F, was the favorite child in our blended family, but I never thought things would go this far. My dad remarried when I was 8, and from day one, my stepmom made it clear that her daughter Amanda would always come first. Over the years, I learned to accept that I would always be second best, but what happened last month crossed a line that I never thought my own father would cross. Growing up, I worked harder than anyone to try to make my dad proud. While Amanda got everything handed to her, I knew I had to earn my place in the family. I threw myself into my studies, staying up late every night to maintain perfect grades. By junior year, I had a 4.0 GPA, was president of the debate club, and volunteered at the local animal shelter every weekend. My guidance counselor even wrote me a glowing recommendation that helped me secure a prestigious scholarship covering half of my college tuition. I didn't stop there. I wanted to prove I could be independent, so I taught myself jewelry making through online videos and started my own Etsy shop when I was 16. Within a year, I was making enough to cover all my own expenses and put some away for college. My dad barely acknowledged any of it, just giving me a distracted "that's nice, honey" whenever I tried to share my achievements. Meanwhile, Amanda floated through life without a care in the world. She failed out of her first attempt at college after partying all semester instead of attending classes. My stepmom convinced my dad to give her a fresh start at an even more expensive private university, which she promptly dropped out of again after deciding she was too creative for traditional education. She cycled through retail jobs, never lasting more than a few weeks before quitting because the work was beneath her. But none of that mattered to my parents, they just kept praising her free spirit and artistic soul while paying all her bills. Everything came to a head when Amanda got engaged to James, whose family owns a chain of luxury hotels. She'd only known him for 6 months, but according to her, it was true love. The real truth? She was obsessed with his family's wealth and social status. From the moment he proposed, Amanda became a complete bridezilla, determined to throw the most extravagant wedding our small town had ever seen. The budget started at an already ridiculous $50,000 and kept ballooning as Amanda added more and more absurd expenses. She needed a designer dress from Paris because nothing local was good enough. The venue had to be the historic mansion an hour away because it was the only place worthy of her vision. She demanded exotic orchids flown in from Thailand because local flowers were too basic. Every time my dad tried to suggest something more reasonable, my stepmom would shut him down, insisting that Amanda deserved absolute perfection on her special day. I remember sitting at the kitchen table one evening, listening to them discuss spending $10,000 on a chocolate fountain and ice sculptures, while I was trying to figure out how to afford my textbooks for the upcoming semester. When I quietly mentioned that maybe the budget was getting a bit extreme, my stepmom snapped at me. "You're just jealous because no one would ever throw a wedding like this for you," she said with that nasty smile she always used when putting me down. Amanda just laughed and added, "Maybe if you weren't so boring and actually dated someone worthwhile, you'd understand why this is important." Last month, I was in my dorm room working on a paper when I decided to log into my college fund account. I needed to print some paperwork for my financial aid renewal, and I figured I'd check the balance while I was there. The moment the page loaded, my whole world stopped. Instead of the $87,000 that should have been there, money that represented years of savings, gifts, and my mom's inheritance, I saw a balance of $0. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial my dad's number. When he finally answered, I could barely get the words out. "Dad, what happened to my college fund?" "There's nothing there." The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know before he even spoke. When he finally did, his voice was quiet and hesitant, so different from his usual confident tone. "Sweetheart, I was going to talk to you about this. We had to borrow some money for Amanda's wedding expenses. Things got a bit out of hand with the costs, but we'll pay it back, I promise." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Borrow? You took all of it? How am I supposed to pay for next semester?" Before my dad could answer, I heard my stepmom grab the phone. "Now listen here," she said in that condescending tone I've grown to hate. "Amanda is getting married to someone from a very important family. This wedding needs to be perfect. You're being incredibly selfish right now. This is your sister's one special day. Besides, you can always take out student loans like normal people do. Stop trying to make Amanda feel bad about her happiness." In the background, I could hear Amanda's shrill voice chiming in, "Yeah, it's not like you're doing anything important with that money anyway. College is just a waste of time, look how well I'm doing without it. You're just trying to ruin everything like you always do." I was devastated. That money represented years of saving, birthday checks from relatives, earnings from my jewelry business, and most importantly, the inheritance my mom left me when she passed away when I was 6. I had been counting on that money to cover the portion of tuition my scholarship didn't pay for. Without it, I wouldn't be able to return to college next semester. In tears, I called my mom's parents, my grandparents, and told them everything. They were furious. Not only had my dad taken my college fund, but he had also spent the money my mom had specifically left for my education. They told me not to worry and that they would handle everything, but they wouldn't tell me exactly what they were planning. The day of Amanda's wedding arrived, and it was even more extravagant than I'd imagined. The historic mansion had been transformed into something out of a royal fairy tale, with crystal chandeliers everywhere, ice sculptures of swans flanking the entrance, and thousands of those imported Thai orchids covering every surface. The guest list had somehow swelled to over 300 people, most of whom were James's family's business connections that Amanda was desperate to impress. I stood in the bridal suite, trying not to cry as I squeezed into the hideous bridesmaid dress Amanda had chosen. It was a sickly mustard yellow color that clashed horribly with everyone's skin tone, with unflattering ruffles and a bubble skirt that made us all look like deformed bell peppers. Amanda had spent weeks adjusting my dress specifically, claiming she needed to take it in even though it was already too tight. I'd overheard her telling the other bridesmaids that she'd chosen this style because it would make me look extra pudgy in the wedding photos. "Stop fidgeting with the dress," Amanda snapped at me while her makeup artist applied her false eyelashes. "It's not my fault you didn't lose weight like I suggested. God, you're so determined to ruin everything. Just try to stay in the background during photos, okay? I don't want you embarrassing me in front of James's family." My stepmom nodded in agreement, adjusting Amanda's custom-made French lace veil that cost more than a semester of my tuition. "Honey, maybe you should stand at the end of the line during the ceremony. We want everything to look perfect for the society photographer." Just as the ceremony was about to begin, my grandparents walked in. My grandfather asked to say a few words before things got started. Amanda was annoyed but couldn't really refuse since several guests had already noticed them. What happened next left everyone in shock. My grandfather cleared his throat and announced that he wanted to give a special wedding gift. The room fell silent as he pulled out a leather portfolio and adjusted his reading glasses. What happened next was like watching a perfectly choreographed takedown. "Before I present this gift," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the reception hall, "I'd like to share some interesting information I've recently discovered. You see, when my beloved daughter, the bride's stepmother, passed away, she left more than just a college fund for her daughter. She left an extensive real estate portfolio, currently valued at approximately $3.2 million. A murmur went through the crowd. I saw James's parents exchange glances. My dad had started to look very pale. "This portfolio," my grandfather continued, "was to be managed by her husband as a trustee until her daughter turned 21. However, there were very specific conditions attached to this trust. The most important being that the college fund, which was established separately, must remain untouched except for educational expenses." He paused, letting his words sink in. Amanda's perfectly made-up face had started to twitch. My stepmom was gripping her champagne glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. "By emptying that college fund to pay for today's festivities," my grandfather's tone dripped with disdain, "the trustee has violated the terms of the trust agreement. As the secondary trustee, I am legally obligated to take control of all the properties effective immediately. I have the documentation right here, which has already been filed with the county court. The real kicker? The house we lived in, the one my stepmom had always bragged about coming from her family, was actually part of my mom's inheritance. My grandparents had proof that my stepmom's family had sold it to my mom years before she passed away. My dad and stepmom had been lying about the house's ownership for years." The wedding came to a screeching halt. Amanda started screaming that they couldn't do this to her on her special day. Her fiancé's family looked horrified. My stepmom burst into tears. My dad just stood there, white as a sheet, as my grandfather continued explaining that they had 30 days to vacate the property. My grandparents then turned to me and announced that they had already arranged for me to move into one of the smaller properties from the trust. They would help me manage the rest of the real estate portfolio, and the rental income would more than cover my college expenses. They had also set up a new trust that my dad couldn't touch. Amanda's wedding fell apart after that. Her fiancé's family had been lied to about her background and financial status, and they weren't happy. The fiancé called off the wedding on the spot, saying he couldn't marry someone whose family had been deceiving everyone. Amanda had a complete meltdown, screaming that I had ruined her life and that none of this would have happened if I had just kept my mouth shut about the stupid college fund. It's been a month since what everyone in town now refers to as the wedding disaster. I've settled into one of my mom's properties, a beautiful craftsman-style house near the university that feels more like home than anywhere I've lived since she passed. My grandparents have been teaching me about property management, and I'm discovering that I have a real knack for it. Last week, I successfully negotiated my first commercial lease renewal, and the sense of accomplishment I felt was incredible. My dad's attempts at reconciliation have been relentless. He calls daily, leaving long voicemails that swing between desperate apologies and guilt-tripping manipulation. "I was just trying to keep the peace," he'll say, "or everything I did was for the family. Yesterday's message really took the cake. I know I made mistakes, but you're tearing this family apart by holding on to your anger. Your mother would want us to stay together. That last line made me laugh out loud. My mom was smart enough to set up an airtight trust specifically because she didn't trust him to protect my interests. She knew exactly who he was, even back then. My stepmom and Amanda have been forced to move in with Amanda's Aunt Claire, who lives in a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. It's quite a step down from the sprawling house they're used to, and from what I hear, the arrangement is already strained. Claire's always been the black sheep of their family because she believes in actually working for a living instead of mooching off others. They've been running a smear campaign against me on social media and around town, posting tearful selfies about how I destroyed their lives out of jealousy and betrayed my own family for money. Amanda even started a GoFundMe for her wedding recovery fund, claiming she's suffering from PTSD after her special day was violently ruined by a vengeful stepsister. Fortunately, most people in town know the real story by now, and the fundraiser has only managed to raise $47 in 2 weeks. But honestly, for the first time in my life, I feel like justice has been served. My mom made sure I would be taken care of, and even though she's gone, she's still protecting me through the preparations she made. My grandparents have been incredibly supportive, helping me learn about property management and encouraging me to focus on my education. Last week, I received a certified letter from Amanda, 20 pages of her signature dramatic handwriting, complete with tear stains, probably fake, and multiple underlined passages. The level of manipulation was almost impressive. She started by describing how much she's suffered since the wedding, detailing how her life has been completely ruined by my cruel and selfish actions. The letter then took an interesting turn, switching to a more conciliatory tone. She wrote that she's willing to forgive my horrible betrayal if I agree to let them move back into the house. She even included a detailed proposal. She would graciously allow me to keep 2 of the smaller properties, while she and my stepmom would manage the rest for the good of the family. But the real kicker came in the final pages. Amanda explained that she's already started dating one of James's wealthy cousins, who apparently doesn't care about her past because he sees her true soul, and they might get engaged soon. She suggested that I could make things right by signing over some of the properties as a wedding gift, to prove that I'm truly sorry for ruining her first wedding. I didn't bother responding to her delusional demands. Instead, I simply added the letter to the growing file of documentation my lawyer suggested I keep. He says it's important to maintain records of all their attempts at contact and manipulation, just in case they try to challenge the trust arrangements in court again. My grandparents tell me that my mom would be proud of how I've handled everything. I think they're right. I'm no longer the doormat that my dad and stepmom took advantage of. I'm my mother's daughter, and I'm finally standing up for myself. Update 2. Wow, I wasn't expecting such an overwhelming response to my post. The support from this community has been incredible, and I want to give you all an update on what's been happening in the past few weeks. First, my dad showed up at my new place unannounced last Tuesday. I was in the middle of a Zoom meeting with my property management team when I saw his car pull up through my security cameras. Yes, I installed those after moving in, my grandparents insisted. He stood on my porch for almost an hour, crying and begging through the Ring doorbell camera. He kept saying he had lost everything because of one little mistake and that he didn't deserve this punishment. I stayed in my home office and watched him on the camera, feeling strangely detached from the whole scene. The man sobbing on my porch wasn't the strong, authoritative father figure I'd spent years trying to please. He was just a weak person who had failed both his wives and his daughter. When he finally left, he placed an envelope under my welcome mat. Inside was a 10-page letter detailing how Amanda has fallen into a deep depression, how my stepmom might lose her job at the country club because of all the gossip, and how their lives are shattered because of my vindictive actions. The irony of him trying to guilt-trip me about Amanda's depression wasn't lost on me. Where was this concern for mental health when I cried myself to sleep after every one of Amanda's tantrums? Where was this worry about emotional well-being when they forced me to watch my college dreams crumble so Amanda could have her perfect princess wedding? Yesterday, my grandparents' lawyer dropped another bombshell. During his investigation of the trust violations, he discovered that my mom had actually set up 2 separate trusts, one for the real estate portfolio and another specifically for my education. My dad had somehow managed to merge them without proper authorization shortly after marrying my stepmom. The lawyer believes this was done illegally and is building a case for criminal charges. When he told me this, I felt physically sick thinking about how long they'd been planning to steal my inheritance. Amanda's social media campaign against me has reached new levels of ridiculous. She's now posting daily trauma recovery updates where she details how my betrayal has given her anxiety, PTSD, and something she calls inherited family trauma. Apparently, she's been reading self-help books in her aunt's apartment. She even started a YouTube channel called Surviving Sisterly Betrayal where she posts lengthy videos about how I manipulated our grandparents and stole her birthright. The funny thing is, most people who know the whole story have taken my side. Even her ex-fiancé James reached out to me through LinkedIn to apologize. He explained that he'd had doubts about Amanda's character for a while, especially after she demanded he sign a prenup that would give her half his family's company shares in case of divorce. My revelations at the wedding just confirmed what he'd suspected, that she and my stepmom were gold diggers who had been lying about their background and finances. The best part of all this drama is that I'm actually thriving despite their attempts to paint me as the villain. I'm excelling in my business courses. Turns out managing a real estate portfolio provides amazing real-world experience from my classes. My jewelry business has taken off too, partly because some of Amanda's exposed posts accidentally drove traffic to my Etsy shop. One of my business professors was so impressed with how I've handled everything that she offered me an internship at her consulting firm for next summer. My grandparents have been incredible through all of this. They've not only taught me about financial management but have also helped me understand that what I experienced growing up was emotional abuse. My grandmother connected me with an amazing therapist who specializes in family trauma, and I've been going to sessions twice a week. It's helping me process years of gaslighting and manipulation, and for the first time in my life, I'm learning what healthy family relationships should look like. Last weekend, we found a box of my mom's old diaries in one of the property storage units. Reading them has been both heartbreaking and healing. She wrote about her concerns regarding my dad's financial decisions and her fears about what might happen to me if anything happened to her. She was so smart and forward-thinking. Setting up those trusts was her way of protecting me even after she was gone. In one entry, she wrote about her hopes for my future, saying she dreamed of me becoming a strong, independent woman who wouldn't let anyone take advantage of her. I cried when I read that because I finally feel like I'm becoming that person she wanted me to be. The most recent development is that my stepmom tried to contact me through my university's alumni office, claiming she needed to reach me about an urgent family medical situation. When I had my lawyer check, it turned out she was trying to get my new address so they could serve me with papers demanding fair compensation for improvements they'd made to my mom's properties over the years. The lawyer shut that down quickly, pointing out that they'd been living rent-free in my property for over a decade. Some people have suggested that I'm being too harsh, that family is family and I should forgive them. But I've realized that forgiveness doesn't mean letting toxic people back into your life. I can forgive them for my own peace of mind while still maintaining firm boundaries. Right now, those boundaries mean keeping them completely out of my life while I focus on building my future. I'm finally living life on my own terms, managing my properties, growing my business, and planning for a future that's no longer limited by their manipulation and control. My mom might not be here physically, but I feel her strength with me every day. Thank you all for helping me stay strong through this journey. Your support has meant the world to me.